Hey guys, tonight we're traveling somewhere familiar and strange all at once. A quiet town called Hill Valley. It's nestled in 1985, where every brick on Main Street hums with a nostalgic promise. And a stainless steel car is about to rip a hole in the very fabric of space-time. The air is thick with cassette tape hiss and hairspray. And somewhere nearby, a clock is ticking just a little too loud. You're wearing denim, of course. And you've got that feeling, the one that comes just before the universe changes. You're about to meet a wild-eyed inventor? Dodge angry Libyans in a mall parking lot. And accidentally time travel into your mom's teenage years? You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Post your location and local time in the comments. Let's see where and where. All listening from now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand at the edge of Hill Valley, 1985. It's evening, and the streets are emptying like the tail end of a dream. There's a VHS warmth to everything, the neon buzz of the Texaco sign, the lazy squeak of a bicycle chain, the faint hiss of sprinklers arcing over a lawn, someone clearly mowed diagonally for aesthetic reasons. You start walking slowly, sneakers muffled on the cracked sidewalk. The town has a strange pulse. It's almost too perfect. The gas is cheap, the newspapers cost pocket change, and teenagers still hang out at diners instead of doom scrolling. Even the dogs seem friendlier. You pass a movie theater marquee, orgy American style. Well, okay, maybe not everything is PG. You move past Lou's Cafe and the Hill Valley Courthouse. The clock tower, frozen at 10:04 p.m., looms overhead like a forgotten god. Its hands haven't moved in 30 years. Locals still talk about the lightning strike that froze it there, almost like it's a shrine. No one ever asks why the city doesn't just fix it. Maybe they're scared of what happens when time starts. Ticking again, you trudge uphill, past rows of sleepy tract homes, lights blinking off, one by one. At the corner house, there's a garage light still on, buzzing softly. Inside, wires dangle like overcooked spaghetti, and something smells faintly of burnt toast and ozone. A Rube Goldberg nightmare ticks and hums. You don't step inside. You've seen enough 80s movies to know that touching anything here might send you to Mars. A newspaper on the ground catches your eye. Plutonium stolen from nuclear facility. Casual, as you keep walking, a skateboard rolls past your feet, propelled by no one. It veers gently to the curb, then just stops. You pick it up. It's warm, too warm for this cool night. A van hums by, headlights dim, slows just long enough for the passenger to make deliberate eye contact with you. You blink. They're gone. You make a mental note to never accept candy from strangers in Hill Valley. Or plutonium. You finally reach the edge of Lion Estates. 2 stone lions guard the gated entrance like exhausted Roman sentries. The sign, shiny cheesy, welcomes you to the suburban frontier. The houses beyond look like someone copy-pasted them from a real estate brochure, beige, square, a little too symmetrical. Suddenly a car engine roars to life nearby. Not just any engine, it's got a whine to it, almost electronic. You follow the sound. A DeLorean sits in the empty lot behind. It's Wind Pines Mall. Stainless steel body glinting like a lunar lander. Gull-wing doors still open. Next to it stands the doc himself, white lab coat, wild hair like he styled it with a leaf blower, eyes twitching with caffeine and genius. He's talking to a dog? No, Einstein the dog, nestled inside the car. The doc types rapidly on a keypad, mumbling about flux capacitors and gigawatts. Occasionally he stops to check his watch, then the sky, then mutters something about weather cooperation. You hide behind a column and watch. You should go home. Should definitely go home. But then he says it clear as a bell through the hum of the engine. When this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're going to see some serious S. Well, we'll skip the last part. This is still bedtime after all. And like that, the DeLorean surges forward across the parking lot. Its tires scream. Flames scorch behind it. A wave of white light blinds you for a second, then it's gone. Just empty air and 2 trails of fire snaking across the asphalt. A second later, the van from earlier screeches into the lot. The back doors swing open. Armed men spill out, yelling in a language you don't understand. They're carrying rocket launchers in a mall parking lot. Doc turns, panics, sprints. But he's not fast enough. You hear gunfire, distant, muffled, like it's coming through a pillow. You duck instinctively. Einstein whimpers from inside a crate. You want to run, but your legs are heavy, your head swims. One of the terrorists waves a gun your way. You freeze, then screech. Tires. The DeLorean returns. No driver. It rolls to a stop inches from your feet, the driver's door popping open like a yawn. Steam billows from the vents. The inside smells like scorched plastic and, is that McDonald's? Look down. Inside, Doc's voice echoes from a tape recorder. Marty, if you're hearing this, I'm probably dead. Charming, you climb into the seat. Everything glows blue. The buttons feel alive, thrumming gently under your fingers. The flux capacitor blinks in time with your heartbeat. You tap the keypad without thinking. Destination. November 5th, 1955. The car shudders. You grip the wheel. 88 miles per hour. Time stretches. The stars bend. And then everything goes white. Historians still argue whether the DeLorean design was pure movie magic or a deeper cultural metaphor. For our obsession with nostalgia, what's certain is that by the mid-1980s, the car had become a symbol of retrofuturism, blending sleek lines with quirky impracticality. The real DeLorean Motor Company went bankrupt long before it became an icon, sort of like inventing the toaster, but forgetting the bread. Also, fun fact, the original time machine in early drafts wasn't even a Corvette, was a fridge. But the producers feared kids might climb into real refrigerators trying to time travel. It's probably a smart move. You blink as color rushes back in sepia tones and big band music. You're not in the mall parking lot anymore. You're not even in the right decade. You're standing in the middle of a field now, and it smells unmistakably like cow. A distant moo confirms it. Tall stalks of grass brush your knees as you stumble forward, dazed, blinking into a crisp morning that smells like damp earth and gasoline. The DeLorean sputters behind you, still ticking like it's trying to cool itself off, steam curling from the vents. Somewhere to your left, a rooster crows with suspiciously theatrical timing. Welcome to 1955. You're not ready. But here we are. In the distance, a farmhouse creaks awake. An old pickup sits in the driveway like a fossil. And behind the screen, door, someone squints at you from inside. You glance down, still in your red puffy vest, Nikes, and denim jacket. You look like you fell out of a J.C. Penney time machine. Or worse, like a future alien in a teenager's body. The farmhouse door slams open. A teenage boy points at you and yells, "It's him. He's from outer space." You blink confused until you notice the comic book in his hand. Tales from Space? On the cover? A silver-suited alien crawling out of a flying saucer that looks exactly like your DeLorean. Okay, time to leave. You sprint back to the car as shotgun pellets pepper the dirt near your feet. The dad's yelling something about commies. You dive in and hit reverse. The car chokes, sputters, dies. Classic. You push it into the brush, heart pounding, until silence wraps around you like a scratchy wool blanket. Somewhere, a dog barks. Somewhere else, your future self probably just vanished. You hike into town along the railroad tracks, brushing off burrs and hay. Hill Valley 1955 reveals itself slowly, more innocent, more sepia-toned, but just as weird. The town square is buzzing with activity. Kids hopscotch near the courthouse. A barbershop quartet sings badly outside Goldie Wilson's campaign table. Cars are wide, shiny, and painted in pastel optimism. A familiar movie marquee looms above you, Cattle Queen of Montana, starring Barbara Stanwyck. Least it's not an orgy. You duck into Lou's Cafe, nerves frayed, stomach growling. The bell over the door jingles. You slide into a booth and instantly become the subject of every stare in the room. Your vest is throwing people off. The counter guy eyes you warily. What'll it be? He grunts. Pepsi, he blinks. You want a Pepsi free? You're gonna have to pay for it, kid. Right? Soda brand names haven't caught up yet. Stammer something about coffee black? No frills and sip the scalding liquid while trying to look as unalien as possible. Then the door opens behind you and you hear his voice, "Hey, McFly." You nearly choke on the coffee. It's Biff. Younger, but still very much. Biff. Blonde, smug, neck thicker than a tree stump. He swaggers in with his goons, somehow already radiating 1985 jerk energy despite being in his early 20s. Hunch lower in your booth, hoping the universe grants you invisibility. But then you see him, your dad. George McFly, younger, nerdier, hunched over like the human embodiment of an apology. He's at the counter, ordering a milkshake and trying to avoid eye contact with anyone larger than a broomstick. You stare, unsure what to feel. This is the guy who would one day teach you how to ride a bike. The guy who told you that you can't keep good science fiction down. Right now, he's being laughed at by Biff and clearly considering if vanishing into his milkshake is possible. Biff grabs George by the collar and mutters something about homework. George stammers. The same old pattern. You slide out of the booth. You don't mean to, but your body moves on autopilot. Maybe it's the caffeine. Maybe it's cosmic rage. You march straight up to Biff and say the line you didn't know you had stored in your brain. "Hey, why don't you make like a tree and get out of here?" Doesn't land. Biff blinks. His goons snicker. You freeze. Okay, that was definitely not how that was supposed to go. Luckily, someone drops a tray of dishes at the exact moment, and the distraction lets George slip out the back. You do too, ducking into an alley behind the cafe where the trash smells like glass-bottled cola and old meatloaf. You find George again, outside. He's climbing into a bicycle with the coordination of a newborn deer. You follow him at a distance through a quiet neighborhood of picket fences and perfect lawns. Then you spot something that makes your stomach do a gymnastics routine. Your grandmother's house. You peek through the window. Inside, a teenage girl is doing homework. Blonde curls, a prim dress, socks pulled halfway up her calves. It's your mom, Lorraine, except she's 17 and humming along to a Nat King Cole record. Completely unaware that her future son is lurking outside like a time-stressed raccoon, and then the bicycle crashes. George has fallen out of a tree, directly into the flower bed. She runs out to help him, cooing and fussing like a black-and-white sitcom girlfriend. You watch in horror as her gaze shifts from George to you. Her eyebrows raise. Her expression softens. She smiles. Oh no. Oh no. 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 There are many moments in history where people may wish to disappear running into an ex. It's answering a Zoom call in your pajamas. Inventing the Segway. But few match the sheer awkward time travel. Dread of your teenage mother looking at you like that. Historians still argue whether Back to the Future was always meant to toe the line of sci-fi romance taboo, or if the writers just leaned too hard into Oedipus vibes for shock value. What's undeniable is that this twist your mom, unknowingly falling for you, helped cement the film's infamy and brilliance. Quirky fact? The original script had Lorraine calling Marty Calvin Klein based on his underwear label, but in some international versions, it's changed to Pierre Cardin. Somehow still awkward, you duck away from Lorraine's stare, heart racing. Back at the DeLorean where you've now dragged it with the help of a half-broken wheelbarrow. You flip switches, smack the dashboard, and whisper gentle curses. No fuel. The plutonium's gone, and so is your easy ticket home. You're standing in the garage of a modest suburban house, somewhere on the sleepy side of Hill Valley. The DeLorean is covered with a tarp you borrowed from someone's backyard, and you've got a clipboard in your hand that says absolutely nothing helpful. The car still needs 1.21 gigawatts of electricity, and in 1955, there's no such thing as a convenient corner plutonium mart. You sigh and stare at the flux capacitor like it owes you rent money, your only shot. Find Doc Brown, the 1955 version of him. Anyway, hopefully before he's invented anything more unstable than his hair gel. After some sneaky digging, and asking a confused librarian about local men of science. You end up in front of a Victorian mansion with spires that loom like eyebrows. This is Doc's place, but instead of being filled with blinking panels and suspicious steam, it's just ... nice. Like someone's weirdly rich uncle lives here and plays the tuba. You knock. Silence. Then, crash. Followed by something that sounds like a yelp and a duck honk. The door creaks open. Doc Brown stares at you. Goggles on his forehead, grease on his chin. He's younger, somehow even more frantic looking. Like he just drank 3 espressos and then got electrocuted for fun. "Ken, I help you?" He says, eyeing your vest, like it personally offends him. You take a breath and say the only sentence more terrifying than a time paradox. "I'm from the future." Silence. He slams the door in your face. You stand there awkwardly, shifting from foot to foot while a dog barks from inside. After a few minutes, saying some cautious re-knocking, Doc lets you back in. Probably just to ask how many screws are loose in your brain. You show him the time circuits. You explain how you met him in 1985, how you've traveled through time and his own invention. He watches you, nodding slowly like he's cataloging your delusions. Then you mention one phrase that changes everything. On the night of the storm, November 12th, 1955, you're standing on the clock tower when lightning hits it. He freezes. "How could you possibly know that?" You hold up the flyer save. "The clock tower which you saved in your jacket, mostly by accident, the date, the time, everything matches." Suddenly Doc's whole demeanor shifts from suspicion to full-throttle manic inspiration. He lets out a breathy laugh, pulls out a sketch pad, starts scribbling like a caffeinated madman. "We'll use the lightning bolt," he mutters. "It's the only natural phenomenon powerful enough to generate 1.21 gigawatts of electricity." Yes, of course," you half smile. "That's great and all, but Doc, how exactly do we catch lightning in a car?" Doc stops, looks up, and grins. "We're going to need a very long wire." The rest of the day is a montage of absurd science prep. You help Doc measure cable lengths across the town square while trying not to get hit by 1950s traffic, just somehow both slower and more dangerous. At one point, you almost get run over by a Packard while holding a metal rod. Not ideal. And speaking of not ideal, Lorraine has found you again. She appears beside the courthouse with a notebook and an expression that can only be described as crushing hard. You try to avoid eye contact, but it's like she has a built-in Marty radar. "Hi, Calvin," she says sweetly. "Want to come over for dinner? My parents would love to meet you." You glance at Doc, who mouths something that looks like run. And yet you go. Because saying no to your own teenage mom feels weirdly mean, even though it's also weirdly wrong, like violating several laws of physics and therapy. You arrive at Loren's house around 6 p.m., stomach turning. Her father, your future grandfather, opens the door in a bow tie and sweater vest. Her mother, your future grandmother, is chain-smoking and muttering about how kids today don't understand manners. The dinner table is a 1950s fever dream. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, green beans that squeak when you chew them. Lorraine keeps staring at you over her glass of milk like she's sizing up her future wedding venue. Her brothers are yelling about the honeymooners. The baby sister is throwing peas. It's a lot. Halfway through dinner, Loren's mom asks, "Where you live?" You panic and say, "Around here." Then immediately regret it. "Do you have a television?" her dad asks. "Two," you blurt. They all gasp like you just announced you own a spaceship. Which, to be fair, you kinda do. Later, Lorraine corners you in the hallway. "You know, Calvin, I don't think I've ever met someone like you," she says, twirling a strand of her hair. "You're different," you nod, backing away slowly. "Yep, very different." "From a whole other dimension of different?" She leans in. You can almost hear the time paradox forming at that moment. George McFly bursts through the door like an awkward superhero, holding a bouquet of mashed-up flowers and panting like he just sprinted across the block. I'm here for Lorraine," he squeaks. Everyone freezes. Lorraine looks from George to you, then back again. "Oh," she says, voice flat. The moment passes, like the flux. Historians still argue whether George's heroic transformation is realistic or just a scriptwriter's fantasy of nerd empowerment. But the underlying idea that one small, brave moment can echo across decades is undeniably sweet. Oh, and that puffy vest you're wearing. In the 1950s, locals really did assume it was a life preserver. Fringe fashion fact. Marty's outfit became so iconic that thrift stores actually saw a spike in red vest sales after the film's release. Some of them were even rebranded as time traveler coats. Marketing, baby. Back at Doc's house, you debrief the night's events while holding an ice pack to your forehead. You're not even sure why. Emotional time whiplash. Doc pats your shoulder. It's working, he says. We just need a little more luck. And a little less Oedipus. You laugh. You don't want to, but you do. Because even here, even now, in 1955, while everything feels upside down, you know you're not alone. There's someone who believes you. Someone who sees the big picture. Someone with enough hair gel to fuel the future. You wake up the next morning on Doc Brown's couch with a spring poking your lower back and a weird dream still lingering something about being chased by a vending machine that only dispenses plutonium. As you stretch, the smell of solder, old books, and scorched toast wafts through the air. Doc's already been up for hours, muttering to himself about wire tension and flux synchronization. He hands you a screwdriver, a cup of black coffee, and a smile that says, "You're going to be helping whether you like it or not. Today is about two things: planning the lightning strike to send you back to the future, and fixing your parents. Dating life before your family literally stops existing. Casual stuff. Doc unrolls a massive blueprint of the courthouse square and points at it with the same intensity you'd reserve for defusing a bomb. At exactly 10:04 p.m., lightning will strike the clock tower. We'll run a cable from here to here, he says, tracing it across telephone poles and trees. The DeLorean will accelerate to 88 miles per hour, hit this line, and boom instant. Gigawatts, you nod. What happens if I'm late? He stares. You'll be stuck here in the 50s. Forever. You glance out the window at a milk truck and a guy mowing the lawn in slacks and a tie. Forever suddenly feels a little claustrophobic. Then there's the other mission. Making sure your mom falls in love with your dad. You and Doc brainstorm in a frantic, sleep-deprived kind of way. The plan? You'll take Lorraine to the enchantment. Under the sea dance, you'll make a move. George will heroically step in. Instant chemistry, lifelong love, and your existence secured. Flawless. In theory, the reality, so much weirder. First, convincing George to ask Lorraine to the dance is like convincing a goldfish to fly a plane. You find him hiding in the school library, nose deep in a pulp sci-fi novel titled Space Zombies from Mars. He yelps when you show up, like you've caught him doing something criminal instead of just reading. George, you have to ask her. Tonight, you've got one shot. I can't talk to girls. I hyperventilate just thinking about it. Do you want to be alone forever? Because that's literally what's going to happen. Gulps, eyes wide, to motivate him. You try showing him how Biff treats Lorraine looming over her locker, cracking inappropriate jokes, grabbing at her like he's never heard of personal space. It's painful to watch. George clearly hates it, but he does nothing, just shrinks into himself. You sigh. Plan B, you sneak into George's room that night in full nuclear hazmat suit. The one Doc keeps for urgent radioactive emergencies and Halloween. You pop a cassette into your Walkman, crank up the volume, and blast Van Halen right into George's ears. He bolts upright in bed, screaming, "I am Darth Vader," you say in your best growl, from the planet Vulcan. "I must take Lorraine to the dance, or I will melt your brain." Does it work? Sort of. The next day, George is visibly shaking as he approaches Lorraine in the school hallway. You watch from behind a trophy case, half praying, half ashamed. He clears his throat, stands up straighter, and Lorraine, my density has popped. Me too. You close enough. She stares, blinks, and giggles. I think you mean destiny. George turns beet red, but she's not laughing at him. She's just intrigued. Progress. Meanwhile, Doc is setting up the clock tower rig, like it's the set of an overambitious high school play. He's perched up near the top with a wrench in his mouth, yelling instructions you mostly can't hear and probably shouldn't follow. That wire needs to be precisely 33 feet and 6 inches. Not 7. 6. You hold a coil of cable like it's a snake about to bite. And then, right as you're heading back to the garage to test the ignition coil, Lorraine shows up in a dress. With you as her date? Wait, what? Apparently, she asked you to the dance, and in your sleep-deprived haze, you agreed. Fantastic. Now, you're her date to the dance where she's supposed to fall in love with someone else. You tell Doc. He nods solemnly. Well, this is going to be spectacularly uncomfortable. Historians still argue whether the entire Enchantment Under the Sea sequence is the most romantic or most chaotic moment in 80s cinema. Some praise its fusion of time travel, tension, and teen angst. Point out very fairly that being in a car with your mom while she's actively trying to kiss you is psychologically damaging. Fun fringe tidbit. The original name of the dance in early drafts was A Night in Atlantis, but the writers changed it last minute when someone realized it sounded more like a cruise. Package. You show up to the dance with Lorraine on your arm. She looks lovely. You look like you want to disappear into another dimension. The gymnasium is decked out in fishnets, shimmering balloons, and an underpaid band playing awkwardly upbeat covers. There's a punch bowl and too much hairspray in the air. Your heart pounds as you watch the door. George is late. Lorraine pulls you onto the dance floor. You sway awkwardly. She stares into your eyes like you're the last boy on earth. She leans in closer. You freeze. She kisses you. And then she pulls back. Something's off. You see it in her eyes. That felt weird, she says, frowning, like kissing my brother. You exhale in pure relief. Same. Before you can dive into a therapy session, the door bursts open. Biff. Because of course it's Biff. He storms in, sees you with Lorraine, and loses it. His face twists into a snarl as he shoves you aside and grabs her by the wrist. I told you to stay away from her, punk. You stumble. Dazed. Biff drags her out into the school parking lot. George arrives seconds later. You grab him, breathless. She's in trouble. Biff's out there. George pales. I can't, you can. You push him toward the doors. He stares for a second, then sprints. You follow behind just in time to see him approach Biff. Pinning Lorraine against a car door, George taps him on the shoulder. Biff turns. What do you think you're? Crack. George punches him square in the jaw. Biff crashes to the ground like a felled. Lorraine gasps. George blinks at his own fist, like it's just told him a secret. You smile. Everything is starting to shift. Time is nudging itself back into. Place your back inside the gym, standing in the corner like a proud time-traveling matchmaker. Watching your parents slow dance under paper-matched jellyfish and shimmering streamers. The band is playing Earth Angel, and the whole room smells faintly of cologne, floor wax, and overcooked hot dogs. It's the kind of moment that makes everything worth it almost enough to forget that you're supposed to be in a car. Going 88 miles per hour in less than an hour. Almost. Then the music starts to warp. Your vision flickers. You glance down at your hand and it's going transparent. Panic hits like a cold splash of pond water. You run to the bandstand, where the lead guitarist has just sliced his hand, trying to pry his guitar cable from a soda-soaked amp. You don't even ask questions. You just yell, "Can you play the guitar?" He stares. "Kid, I'm in the band." You toss him your Walkman. "Good, I'll finish the set." You leap onto the stage, heart pounding. A borrowed Gibson guitar hangs heavy around your neck. The crowd is murmuring, confused. George and Lorraine, they're holding hands, but not kissing. And until they kiss, you're basically a ghost with a nice jacket. You strum the first chord of Earth Angel. The amp squeals. You try again. Soft, slow, perfect. Lorraine looks at George, eyes wide. George blinks, clearly overwhelmed by this entire week of alien visitations, dream intrusions, and unexpected acts of courage. Then, finally, he leans in. They kiss. Just a light one, no fireworks. But it lands. Your hand flickers solid. Again, breath returns to your chest like air rushing into a vacuum. You don't scream in relief, but it's close. Time begins to stabilize. But hey, you're already up here. You turn to the band and grin. Let's see if you guys are ready for it. You tear into Johnny Be Good with the chaotic joy of someone who just narrowly avoided being erased from the space-time continuum. The guitar wails, the crowd stares, and your foot taps out a rhythm no one in 1955 is even remotely prepared for. You slide across the stage. You duck walk. You accidentally invent rock and roll, and no one stops you. Halfway through the solo, you realize you've just ruined Chuck Berry's moment. You panic and shout, "Your cousin Marvin? Marvin Berry? Yeah, listen to this." Crowd doesn't quite know what to do. Some start dancing like they've been electrocuted. One guy just stands there blinking. A teacher looks vaguely offended. You, however, are having the time of your life, and you're not even sure it's your own timeline anymore. Historians still argue whether the Chuck Berry moment was a brilliant tongue-in-cheek nod to cultural appropriation or a poorly aged rewrite of musical history. What's not up for debate? That guitar solo was fire. Fun fringe fact. Michael J. Fox didn't actually play the guitar solo on set, though he learned all the finger movements. The actual music was recorded by Tim May, a session guitarist who remained uncredited in the film's original release. Sleepy bedtime trivia for the rock and roll dash inclined. You wrap the song with a feedback-laced howl and a dramatic guitar. Slide. Silence. Polite applause. One kid near the front claps a bit too hard and yells, "I guess." This is music now. You climb off stage, flushed, sweating, and vaguely worried that you just changed the future again by inventing punk rock 40 years early. You grab your coat, check your watch, and sprint toward the parking lot. Doc is already there, pacing back and forth like a caffeinated metronome beside the DeLorean. Cables stretch from the tower across the square. The storm clouds are rolling in like actors who waited for their cue. "You're late," he shouts, tapping his watch. "We've only got 8 minutes." You jump into the car, flicking switches and flipping levers like you've rehearsed. Let's do this. Doc hands you the final cable hookup. Once you hit the wire, you'll be back in 1985. Do not slow down no matter what. And remember to know 4 p.m. That's your bolt. He runs toward the tower, dragging the other end of the cable behind him like a wedding veil made of doom. Rain starts to fall. Just a drizzle at first, but enough to make the cobblestones slick. You take a deep breath. The speedometer flickers. 0. You slam the pedal. The DeLorean growls like a caged animal. You race down the street, tires squealing on the wet pavement. Lightning flashing above you like it's rooting for both teams. Doc struggles with the cable. A tree has fallen and yanked the line loose from the tower because of course it has. He climbs the facade with his teeth clenched, trying to reconnect the cord as the wind howls louder. His shoes slip. He screams something that gets lost in the storm. You're accelerating 40, 50. 60 mph. The clock begins its final countdown. 10:03 and counting. Doc swings across the face of the tower like an aging Spider-Man. He grabs the loose end of the cable. The bolt of lightning above begins to pulse. Gathering charge, the DeLorean hits 70. You can see the wire strung across the street now, sagging in the middle like a waiting trap. Yanks the cable taut just in time. You hit 88, the lightning strikes. The wire explodes in a flash of white dot, and just like that, you're gone. Historians still argue whether the timing of the DeLorean's acceleration is even remotely plausible. Physics professors have debated the structural integrity of telephone wires and the conductivity of wet rubber tires for decades. Meanwhile, most fans are just like, but did you see that bolt hit at exactly 10:04? Quirky bonus. The lightning strike and the resulting 1.21 gigawatts remain one of the most exaggerated numbers in all of sci-fi. A bolt of lightning actually produces closer to 3 gigawatts, but who's counting when time travels on the line? Light swallows the scene. When your eyes open again, it's night but a different night. The mall parking lot is back. Sort of, the sign now reads. A lone pine mall. You blink. Didn't it say Twin Pines Mall before? You look around. Everything's still here. The parking lines, the lampposts, the vending machines. But no terrorists. No screaming Doc. Just silence, and then you see him. You running across the lot, chasing after Doc, shouting, "I've got to tell you about the future." The version of you from earlier tonight. Which means you've made it. You sit quietly in the car, heart pounding. Doc sends your earlier self away. Pats Einstein on the head, and just before he walks back to the truck dash Belam, the Libyans. Again, you. Watch in horror as the van screeches into view. You know what's coming? You can't do anything to stop it, except this time, Doc wears a bulletproof vest. He gets up, grinning. You exhale. Dizzy with relief, he opens the DeLorean door. "Welcome. Home," he says. "Now, tell me everything." The rain has stopped, but the pavement still glistens, like glass under the mall lights. You sit beside Doc Brown in the now bulletproof DeLorean. The silence between you buzzing with unspoken relief and static electricity. The faint smell of ozone still clings to your clothes. Like time travel leaves its own brand of aftershave, Doc pulls out a crumpled can of Tab from the glove box and takes a triumphant sip. "Worked like a charm," he says, as if rigging a lightning bolt to strike a moving car is something normal people do on a Saturday night. You stare out the windshield, thoughts spinning. Biff's gone back to being a mild-mannered waxer of cars. Your dad walks taller, laughs louder, and actually talks to you without apologizing to the furniture. Your mom's wearing makeup again, but in a healthy, happy way, not the secret cigarette and sherry at 3 p.m. kind. Everything's changed, and you're exhausted, but you made it. You're safe, until Doc turns to you with that look. "I need you to come with me," he says right now. You blink. What? He's already punching buttons into the keypad. Something's wrong. "With your kids, Marty. Something has to be done about your kids." You're still rubbing your eyes when the gull-wing doors fly open, and Doc is shoving a futuristic-looking garbage chute into the car's engine compartment. "Wait, is that a Mr. Fusion? Runs on banana peels and Miller Lite," he says, proudly, before you can protest. Doc hits the accelerator and the DeLorean rises. Literally, the wheels rotate downward with a mechanical whir, and suddenly, you're levitating a few feet off the ground, flying. Your jaw drops. "You built hover conversion?" Doc shrugs. "I had a coupon." The time circuits flicker. New destination blinks on the screen. OCT 21-2015 for 29 p.m. the future. The car launches forward, shimmering blur against the stars. Try to ask why this can't wait until morning, but Doc's too busy steering through time like a caffeinated falcon in a flash. The stars swirl, colors bend, and Bamir hovering over Hill Valley again. But it's not the same. There are floating cars everywhere. Signs advertise Jaws 19, hoverboard rentals, and something called hydrated pizza. The sky is blue, the streets are clean, and somehow fax machines still exist. People zip around on neon-colored devices that defy logic and OSHA regulations. You land just outside the 80s CAF, which looks like the interior decorator was told do cocaine and remember stuff. Inside, a max headroom waiter takes your order with a glitchy smile, and a kid's arcade machine plays Wild Gunman. 2 children scoff at your clumsy attempts to use it. "You mean you have to use your hands?" One sneers. "It's like a baby's toy." You mutter something about respect and arthritis, but the moment passes. A Doc returns with news. Your future son is about to ruin the family name, apparently. Your kid Marty Jr. is a walking disaster with a penchant for peer pressure and absolutely zero impulse control. Sound familiar? Doc sends you in disguise as your own future offspring. A vest, mirrored cap, and some clumsy slang later, and you're wandering through the town square looking like a walking Snapple ad. You find Biff's grandson Griff hovering, ominously near your future son, who's already nervously agreeing to join some kind of futuristic robbery scheme. You step in, "No deal?" You say flatly. Griff glares. "Your chicken?" You sigh. "Man, is that just a genetic trigger phrase for us? Things escalate because of course they do." Soon you're on a hoverboard, zipping over water fountains between flying cars, and through the futuristic version of a food court while Griff and his gang chase you like turbocharged hornets. The hoverboard wobbles under your feet. It's fast. But it doesn't work on water, which you realize. Just as you slide toward a decorative pond, Griff's already pulled out a rocket-powered board. Overkill much? You panic? You grab a kid's scooter, rip off the handlebar, and turn it into a makeshift boost board? Somehow it works. You lead Griff into a glass building. The gang crashes spectacularly through the front window, landing in what may or may not be a futuristic yoga class. Police arrive. Arrests are made. Crisis temporarily averted. You exhale. Doc drags you back to the alley, eyes wild. That should fix the timeline. Unless you've grown. Unless what, Doc? He holds up a newspaper. The headline ripples before your eyes, changing from Griff arrested in hoverboard incident to Marty McFly Sr. arrested for financial fraud. What? Doc scans the fine print. Apparently you still mess up the future, not your son. You rub your temples. Cool. Cool. No pressure. Historians still argue whether the depiction of 2015 and Back to the Future Part 2 was a prophetic leap or just neon-fueled optimism. We didn't get flying cars or self-drying jackets, but we did get video calls, flat screens, and endless reboots. So maybe it wasn't entirely off. Quirky tidbit. In 2015, Nike actually released power lacing shoes modeled after Marty's futuristic sneakers. They were auctioned off for charity, but the batteries were less reliable than a Tamagotchi on its third hour. You follow Doc back to the DeLorean. I've seen too much, you mutter. My son is a nerd. My daughter is invisible, and I turn into a corporate disaster. Doc frowns. We've got to reset things at the source. Back to 1985. You nod, grateful. The car lifts off. But as you rise into the sky, Doc pauses. The time circuits flash red. The engine stutters. Wind howls. And then a crack of thunder. A bolt of lightning hits the DeLorean mid-flight. The car jerks violently. Doc shouts something and vanishes. You crash land into an alley, rolling out onto the sidewalk. Coughing from the smoke, the DeLorean is gone. Doc is gone. And a man in a Western Union uniform is standing over you with a weathered envelope. You McFly? You nod, dazed. He hands you the letter. It's been sitting in our office for, 70 years. You tear it open with shaking hands. The letter reads, Dear Marty, I'm alive. In 1885. Please don't come after me. You stare at the words. Rain begins to fall again, soft and slow. The future's in chaos. The past just hijacked your only friend and your weekend plans. Ruined. You're still holding the letter when the drizzle becomes a proper downpour, soaking your shoes in that absurd 2015 jacket that dried itself just fine 10 minutes ago, but now chooses to sulk in wet silence. The ink on Doc's letter smudges slightly under your thumb, and for a second, it's hard to tell whether the page is trembling or you are. Doc is in the Wild West, and he doesn't want you to come after him, which naturally means you're absolutely going to come after him. You stuff the letter into your jacket and dash toward the only person who might still be able to help, the 1955 version of Doc Brown. Again, which means you're back at the clock tower. Soaked to the bone, pounding on the garage doors of Doc's workshop like a very persistent time-traveling raccoon. He opens the door, hair frizzed, goggles perched on his forehead, holding a wrench that looks dangerously close to becoming a weapon. You pant. I'm back. Doc blinks. Back from the future? You nod. And the future is a mess. But more importantly, you're in the past. This is not the relaxing evening Doc had planned. You sit down on a workbench still warm from some vacuum tube experiment and explain the whole lightning bolt DeLorean time vortex Western Union thing. He listens, rubbing his temples like he's trying to massage the chaos out of your words. Finally, he says, so you're telling me that in the future, I get zapped back to 1885, send a letter to you, and now you want me to help get me back. To now? Yeah, you sigh. Also, you become a blacksmith. Doc stands still for a beat. Well, that tracks. Historians still argue whether the concept of parallel selves interacting in time travel narratives creates an unsolvable paradox or simply allows for lazy plot loopholes. But as you in 1955 Doc get to work, it becomes clear paradoxes are a luxury reserved for people who aren't elbow deep in flux capacitor fluid. Luckily, the DeLorean is still here buried under decades of desert dust in a cave Doc marked on a map. Together, you set off into the hills surrounding Hill Valley, the wind pushing dry leaves across the road like tumbleweeds. Practicing for their big moment, you find the cave after sunset. It's hidden behind a scraggly patch of sagebrush, blocked by a few suspiciously placed boulders and one very territorial squirrel. Inside, it smells like rust, old dreams, and the metallic temps of preserved genius. You brush dust off the DeLorean's hood. It's intact, just like the letter said. And there's more. A second envelope, taped inside the car's dash. With your name on it, you open it. Marty, if you're reading this, you found the DeLorean. I never expected you to ignore my warning. But then again, I know you too well. If you must come, be careful. Hill Valley in 1885 is no place for a kid with a skateboard. Doc goes on to mention a fuel line that ruptured during his arrival, making the car inoperable. Gasoline, apparently. Hasn't been invented yet, so even if you do get back to 1885, you'll have no way of returning, which, Doc adds in a small scribble, is why you should stay in 1955. You read the letter aloud? Doc winces. Well, he says, that complicates things. You spend the night in the workshop, surrounded by blueprints, ticking clocks, and the faint smell of soldered wires. Doc paces. You snack on cold pizza. Einstein snores in the corner, blissfully unaware that his master is living two timelines at once. Morning arrives with a stubborn optimism. You and Doc tow the hidden DeLorean back to the garage and begin prepping it for the jump. The plan? You'll use the 1955 version of the DeLorean to travel back to 1885. Find Doc and somehow fix the fuel line or build an alternate method of propulsion. Which is, let's be honest, exactly the kind of foolproof scheme that gets people accidentally. Married in saloons, you replace the tires with white wall-compatible one's authentic 19th century rubber with 0% grip and 100% drama. You swap the dashboard readout to match the 1885 setting and debate briefly whether to bring a walkie-talkie. Doc votes no. He mutters something about temporal contamination and weird stares. And finally, you load the car into a drive-in movie theater because, naturally, the most logical launch pad for time travel to the Old West is through a plywood mural of bucking broncos and fake cacti. Doc points toward the painted horizon. Drive straight through that wall at 88 miles per hour, and you'll be back in 1885. Just watch out for the real Indians. You raise an eyebrow. Movie Indians, he clarifies. They only look real. You slide into the seat, the engine hums. Beneath you, like a time bomb wrapped in chrome, you glance at the time circuits sept 2, 1885, 8 o'clock, Doc waves. Try not to die. You gun the engine. The DeLorean peels out across the gravel lot, roaring toward the fake sunset, the wall growing larger, the colors blurring, and bam, time bends. Colors twist. Everything explodes into sound and light. Then dash silence. The car rattles. Your vision clears. You're hurtling through a golden prairie landscape. Birds scattering, dust clouds swirling, and something very much like a buffalo staring you down with the intensity of a furry linebacker. You swerve. The DeLorean fishtails, wheels skidding over dry grass. A whoop rings out from your left. You turn and see an honest-to-goodness band of Native Americans riding toward you. Spears raised, horses galloping. Your brain freezes. Your foot slams the accelerator. The car jerks forward right into a wooden sign. Welcome to Hill Valley EST, 1865. Because of course you made it. The DeLorean groans. Steam erupts from the engine. You come to a rough stop just behind a large boulder. Jump out and barely have time to cover the vehicle with a few canvas scraps before a posse rides by. You flatten yourself against the rock, trying to blend in with the moss. You smell like fear and overheating fusion components. Once the coast is clear, you peek out. The landscape is breathtaking. Open fields, scattered trees, and a dusty road leading to the barely there skeleton of Hill Valley. Water tower stands crookedly on the hill. A few wooden buildings poke out from the earth. It's like they haven't decided whether to stay. You dust yourself off and step onto the path. You've made it. Historians still argue whether Hill Valley is a model of idealized frontier life or a sanitized, Disney-fied version of America's past. Either way, it's got horses, saloons, and a surprising number of mustaches. So far, so accurate. Quirky note: the original Hill Valley set used in Back to the Future Part 3 was later repurposed for multiple TV shows, including Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, and Westworld. One set, many timelines. You squint into the morning. Time to find Doc Brown again? The sun climbs higher as you walk the dusty road into town. Boots kicking up small clouds that cling to your socks like static from history. Hill Valley in 1885 smells like horse, hay, and a general distrust of modern hygiene. It's quaint, it's charming. It's also, frankly, a tetanus playground. You pass a blacksmith shop, a general store, and what looks like the early prototype of a Starbucks sext. It only serves black coffee that could probably remove rust. Horses are tied to wooden posts, their tails twitching in rhythm. A man in a derby hat tips it at you suspiciously. You tip your head back. Bad move. Your 1950s-style vest draws the kind of attention usually reserved for circus acts and escaped lunatics. Someone mutters, "What in tarnation's he wearin'?" You duck into the nearest building. It's the saloon inside. It's exactly what your modern brain imagined. Swinging doors, dusty piano, poker game in the corner, and a bartender who looks like he's been carved from sour leather and life disappointment. Everyone's armed, everyone's scowling. You clear your throat. I'm looking for Emmett Brown. The place goes quiet, real quiet. Like, did you just insult someone's horse quiet? Finally, someone at the bar chuckles. Right. You mean the crazy blacksmith? Bingo, you're directed to a workshop near the edge of town, just past a corral and an old schoolhouse. As you head there, you notice posters on the walls. One in particular catches your eye. Wanted Mad Dog Tannen. Reward, $500. Of course, because the Tannen family tree has roots in every single era and every single one is a talking problem. You make it to the workshop. The smell of oil, smoke, and fried copper hits you like a forgotten science fair project. Tools hang from every wall. Gears, horseshoes, and strange mechanical parts clink and hum. And there, bent over an anvil with welding goggles and a scorched apron, is Doc. His hair is longer. His mustache is an enthusiastic surprise. But it's him, you call out, "Doc." He turns, stops, drops his wrench. Marty, the reunion is fast, and awkward and loud. Doc paces in circles, muttering about paradoxes and torn timelines. And you try not to get singed by sparks flying from the forge. But I told you not to come. He says, "You hold up the burned Mr. Fusion cap from the DeLorean." Groans, of course. He makes tea. It's aggressively herbal. But it gives you something to hold while he explains how he's been living here, quietly fixing wagons and inventing unnecessarily complex butter churns. He's even got a place to stay above the shop, where blueprints double as wallpaper, and a model of Hill Valley sits half-finished on a table. You ask about the DeLorean? He nods. Hid it in an abandoned mine shaft. Sealed tight, but the fuel line's cracked. No gasoline in 1885, and steam engines. Well, let's just say they don't hit 88 miles per hour without turning the passenger into soup. You suggest horses. He gives you a look that makes you feel like you just failed high school physics all over again. Historians still argue whether the Old West was truly as lawless and violent as the movies make it out to be. Some say it was filled with ordinary folks just trying to survive, while others cite diaries and town records full of duels, swindlers, and enough whiskey to float a paddle boat. And in Hill Valley, 1885. That debate is about to become very personal. You spend the next couple days helping Doc work on a new plan. If you can't fix the fuel line, maybe you can push the DeLorean. Doc thinks a train might be the key. You just have to hijack one without, causing catastrophic ripples in the timeline. It's no big deal. But before you can get anywhere with that plant trouble, walks into the shop. Clinking spurs, dusty boots, smell of chewing tobacco and bad intentions. Mad Dog Tannen, and he's got a bone. To pick with that science fella, you duck behind a workbench. Doc steps forward, calm but wary. Tannen squints. You owe me for that horseshoe. Kicked my tooth clean out. Doc smiles nervously. I believe that's a result of improper handling, not faulty workmanship. Mad Dog pulls out a revolver the size of a canoe. The room freezes. You pop up. Just enough to see the vein twitching in Tannen's forehead. Doc keeps his hands up. Perhaps we could discuss repayment terms. Mad Dog sneers. Sure. You die. I call it even. You leap forward. He doesn't owe you anything. Mad Dog blinks. Who's this? Your fancy-dressed assistant? You step in front of Doc. You leave him alone, Buford. That gets a real reaction. Nobody calls me Buford, he snarls. Fists fly. Tools clatter. A soldering iron nearly brands your face. Doc fends off a punch with a welding mask. You against all odds manage to hit Tannen with a bucket of horseshoes. He stumbles back, dazed. But he's not done. Saturday. He yells as his gang drags him out the door. High noon. Dead, Doc turns to you. Congratulations. You're in a gunfight now. You blink. Like a real one. Very real. Very lethal. Cool. Just what your weekend needed. You collapse into a chair as Doc starts pacing again, muttering about bullet trajectories and Newtonian recoil. You're too tired to panic properly. Your brain's already 3 steps into how to fake a fainting spell at high noon. Quirky. Tidbit. Duels in the real Old West were usually far less glamorous than films suggest. Many were drunken messes, filled with accidental misfires, unfair advantages, and occasional bystanders getting winged in the elbow. It's not quite the romanticized ballet of bullets. You stare at the wall. A poster flutters in the breeze. Hill Valley. Festival this Sunday? You smirk? Maybe we can just distract Mad Dog with funnel cake. Doc doesn't laugh. He's too busy drawing a train on the chalkboard. You wake up to the smell of bacon. Burning coal and mild dread, Docs. Already in the workshop, scribbling chalk equations onto wood planks and muttering about velocity curves and thermal tolerance. You sit up on the cot, stretch, and immediately remember, you're scheduled to die in a duel tomorrow. Morning, you say. Yawning, Doc barely glances at you. Did you know the average 1885 revolver has a muzzle velocity of approximately 850 feet per second? That's not ideal. You rub your eyes. So we agree I'm going to get vaporized? He frowns. Not if we can find a loophole. That's the current theme of your life. Time travel loopholes for people who really don't want to get shot. Still, you're determined. You survived the Libyan terrorists, 1955 enchantment, Under the Sea drama, and an awkward almost kiss with your mom? This is just a guy in a funny hat with a gun. And besides, Doc's got a plan. You join him at the chalkboard, where he's diagramming a steam engine slamming into a DeLorean like it's a Lego set. The idea: use a train to push the time machine. Up to 88 miles per hour? The problem? Trains don't usually go that fast, especially when pushing a futuristic sports car loaded with plutonium. So naturally, the solution involves rocket fuel, specifically a custom blend Doc's been developing from moonshine, gunpowder, and something he found behind the saloon. You ask if it's safe? He gives you a look that translates to define safe. Historians still argue whether steam engines of the 1880s could ever reach speeds capable of causing derailment under self-made pressure compounds. Most say no. A few brave souls claim that a well-timed combustion could push the limit's emphasis on combustion. You spend the day testing, which mostly involves lighting things on fire and sprinting for cover. Doc's thrilled. You're reconsidering every life choice that led you to this point, including but not limited to ignoring that very clear letter telling you not to come back to 1885. Around midday, you hitch a ride out to the old rail line Doc mentioned. It curves through the hills, dips into a narrow canyon, and leads toward a rickety bridge Doc says won't be completed until Monday. You stare down at the river far below. So if we don't make it to 88 before this bridge, he finishes, your sentence will plummet to our doom. Classic. The two of you scout the area, marking distances with whitewashed stones and measuring incline. Doc explains the math, though you mostly nod and pretend to understand. Something about gradient plus velocity equals either success or spectacular failure. The wind picks up. Birds scatter overhead. A horse whinnies from behind the ridge. You pause. Did you hear that? Doc tenses. We're not alone. You duck behind a bush just as a figure appears on horseback, Buford, Mad Dog Tannen, flanked by two of his loyal dimwits. He scans the horizon, spits into the grass, and rides off toward town. Close call. You head back with Doc a little dustier and a little more worried. The duel's tomorrow. You're out of time. Unless you do something very stupid. That night, under the workshop lantern's flicker, you come up with your own idea. What if you suggest I don't show up? Doc pauses mid-weld. Then he hunts you down and shoots you in the back. Tannen's not big on calendar etiquette, right? What if I cheat? Define cheat? Bulletproof vest? Not invented yet? Smoke bomb? Unreliable? Let Biff take my place? Doc sighs. Even for you, that's a stretch. Still he gets it. You're not a fighter, you're a skateboarder. A guitar shredding, lunch tray surfing, time-hopping accidental hero. But maybe, just maybe, you can distract Tannen long enough to survive. Doc opens a wooden crate and pulls out something that makes your eyes go wide. A custom-forged, iron-thick metal chest plate. Tempered steel, he says. Heavy as sin, uncomfortable, but it might stop a bullet. You grin. You've been watching spaghetti westerns, haven't you? He doesn't deny it. You practiced your shot fall in the alley behind. The workshop. Landing on stacked hay with a groan that's maybe 80% real. The plan is simple. Fake your death. Let Mad Dog celebrate. Then skip town before he figures it out. What could go wrong? Everything. Literally everything. As the sun sets, you sit on the porch with Doc, sipping root beer from a tin cup. You ask him if he regrets anything ending up here, falling out of time, nearly dying on a weekly basis. He thinks for a moment.
I regret
not bringing more books, he says softly. But no, I've lived more in the gaps of history than most men live in a lifetime. You smile. Even here, in 1885, he's still your Doc. Quirky tidbit, many Wild West blacksmiths like Doc were also dentists, veterinarians, and part-time musicians. Multitasking before it was trendy. Before heading in, you both look up at the stars brighter, clearer, and impossibly distant. There's no radio buzz, no airplanes, no tick-tock. Just crickets, wind, and time stretched thin and whispering. Doc pats your shoulder. Don't die tomorrow. You salute. I'll do my best. You sleep light. Dreams flicker with train. Tracks, gunfire, and clocks that tick backward. And before you know it, it's morning. And so does Mad Dog. Word count. 1091 awaiting continue asterisk. Asterisk, you said. CONTUHHEPT, said. Section 10, you stand in the middle of Hill Valley's main street, sun pounding down like a judgmental spotlight. Wow. Dust curling around your boots with every breeze. People are watching from porches and saloon windows, fanning themselves and whispering bets. Children are ushered inside, doors shut. A tumbleweed rolls by because, yes, reality sometimes leans into cliché. And across the street, Buford Mad. Dog Tannen, in full scowl mode, revolver gleaming at his hip like a hungry vulture. Doc whispers beside you, try to stall. Remember the fall? Easy for him to say. He's not wearing a 40-pound slab of metal under his shirt. You feel like a walking refrigerator door. The bell of the clock tower chimes. High noon. Mad Dog steps forward, spits a glob of tobacco that somehow insults both your ancestry and your haircut, and growls, "Hope you wrote your will, fancy boy." You raise your hands. Listen, we don't have to do this. We could, I don't know, arm wrestle? Maybe play rock, paper, scissors? He draws. You flinch. A gunshot cracks the air like a lightning bolt. You stumble backward dramatically, clutching your chest. The crowd gasps. Doc screams. Tannen cackles. And you drop into the dirt, praying this ridiculous plan worked. Silence. Then cheers. Buford turns, holstering his weapon with a smirk. Out. Told ya I'd put him down. What he doesn't see is you, quietly lifting your head as Doc rushes over. You whisper, "Did it work?" Doc nods. Barely, the plate's dented, but you're alive. He helps you up just as Buford notices the movement. Why didn't you spin around and, in a moment of perfect cinematic timing, punch him square in the jaw? His hat flies off. His gang gasps. And Tannen drops like a sack of turnips right into a pile of horse manure. Because of course it's manure. You don't even try to hide your grin. Some things are universal. The crowd erupts. People rush out, patting your back and calling you a hero. The sheriff nods approvingly. Even the horses seem impressed. Buford's arrested, dragged away in irons while muttering curses about time freaks and city boys. Historians still argue whether duels in the Old West were usually to the death. Some towns outlawed them entirely. Others turned a blind eye. But in Hill Valley, this one ends with applause, mild concussion, and a distinct need for soap. Next morning, you and Doc head out to the tracks. The plan is back on. The train's coming through at 10:04 a.m. Familiar time, right? You prep the DeLorean, loading it with the retrofitted boosters and that delicate blend of improvised rocket fuel. Everything's ready, except ... hesitates. He looks toward the schoolhouse, and you get it, because that's where she is. Clara, the teacher with the starry eyes and sharper mind than most scientists you've ever met, she's the one who made Doc slow down, laugh, dance. He fell for her somewhere between astronomy lectures and saving her from a runaway horse he loves. Her, and he's about to leave, unless he doesn't. I can't tell her the truth, he says, staring at the chalk smudges on his sleeve. She'll never believe it. You shrugged, then lie. Or better show her, which is how the two of you end up awkwardly hauling Clara to the train site under the pretense of a scientific demonstration. She's skeptical, her eyebrow. Arch deserves its own zip code. But then she sees it the DeLorean. The strange tech. The blueprints. The fire trails. You expect screaming? What you get is a whispered Emmett. This is real, isn't it? He nods. She pauses, and then says, "Can I come?" Doc freezes. You both look at her. She repeats, "I want to see the future." With you, Q, heartstrings, the problem? There's only one DeLorean. No time to install extra seatbelts and the boosters. Well, they're a bit volatile. It's an explosive overloaded volatile. Doc looks torn, like really torn. He paces, he mutters. He nearly walks into the train, but finally he turns to you. You go, he says, alone. You blink. Wait, what? I'm staying, he says. With Clara, your stomach drops. But what about he places a hand on your shoulder? I've seen the future. I've lived the past. Maybe it's time I stay somewhere. You want to argue, but... He looks happy. Actually happy. So you nod, and you climb into the DeLorean one last time. He tosses you the remote start key. Aim straight. Don't blink. The train begins to move, puffing smoke, wheels creaking and groaning like an old man waking from a nap. Doc and Clara wave from the coal car, where he's rigged the engine to push the DeLorean like a silver bullet through the hills. The countdown begins. Red log. Orange log. Green log, the wheels turn faster. Your heart pounds louder. Wind tears at your face. 8 miles per hour. And just like that, you're gone. Back to the future. Quirky tidbit. Real-life inspiration for Hill Valley's clock tower includes the old courthouse square in Universal Studios, which also shows up in Gremlins, Bruce Almighty, and To Kill a Mockingbird. Movie magic's own little time loop. You land with a jolt. Hill Valley. 1985. Smoke still trails from the DeLorean as it rolls to a stop near the mall parking lot Lone Pine Mall. Not Twin Pines Mall, Proof that yes, you stepped on that sapling back in the 50s and never looked back. Everything feels cleaner, sharper. You half expect hoverboards and floating trash cans. But no, this is your 1985, the familiar one, and your house. It's there, intact. The garage light's on. There's a fresh coat of paint. And Biff, he's buffing your dad's car, muttering about turtle wax and the importance of elbow grease. Perfection you. Smile, you're home. Home is supposed to feel like a warm blanket familiar, a little worn, maybe with some mystery stains that no one talks about anymore. But this home, this shiny 1985 with clean windows and a strangely confident version of your dad, feels more like a high-definition reboot of the life you remember, your dad. George is laughing with your mom over breakfast smoothies. Your siblings look suspiciously well-adjusted. And Biff is still outside waxing the car, like his job depends on it, 'cause it does. You try to play it cool, casually munching toast like your brain isn't melting from timeline whiplash. But then your mom drops a line that yanks your stomach sideways. "We're so proud of you, Marty." That interview at the record label's today, right? Interview? Record label? You blink like someone just hit the pause button on your brain. The problem with time travel isn't the dinosaurs or the almanacs or the paradoxicists. When your own life starts writing itself without you, you jump into your truck, which now exists and is inexplicably spotless, and cruise down the street. Same town, same smell of lawn clippings and Burger King, but everything's just shinier. Like someone added a new Instagram filter to reality you don't. Get far before Doc's voice rattles through your memory. The almanac. You have to destroy it, Marty. It's too dangerous. And suddenly your pulse spikes. Because you remember the almanac, the sports almanac Doc warned you about. You chased it through 2015, watched old Biff steal it, watched even older Biff profit from it. You remember manure, deception. In a 1985 that looked like a casino-themed nightmare, you thought you fixed it, but what if you didn't? You veer off the road and make for the school. The only person who might have noticed the ripples is Jennifer. Poor Jennifer, still trying to piece together why she passed out on a front porch in 2015, and woke up next to a boyfriend who now owns a power-cleaned denim jacket. You find her by the lockers. "Hey," you say. She smiles. "Hey!" You pause. "We're good, right? Like timeline good?" She blinks. "Marty, did you hit your head again?" You grin. "Yeah. Just making sure." She walks off, probably wondering if you're having another flux capacitor breakdown. You spend the afternoon chasing shadows, rechecking calendar events, watching for signs of time trauma. But everything's weirdly normal. Even Biff seems content being the local bootlicking wax boy. Until that night, you wake up in a cold sweat, dreaming of the alternate 1985-1985, the one where Biff was a billionaire tyrant. Your house was boarded up and Doc had been committed to an asylum. You can still hear it. The TV's blasting from every corner. Re-elect Mayor Biff Tannen. Historians still argue whether Back to the Future Part 2 was a subtle political commentary or just a warning against owning sports books in the wrong decade. Either way, the vision's stuck. You sneak out and drive to the school library, not to read, obviously, but to double-check one critical thing, the local archives. And there it is, a clipping from 1973. Biff Tannen wins big at track, predicts future victories. That's not supposed to be there. Your stomach drops. He still has the almanac daughter. He had it long enough to cause timeline shrapnel. You race to Doc's lab. The original garage looks like it hasn't been used since VCRs were new. Dust covered. Clocks and a faint echo of Tesla coils fill the space. But one thing's still there, the safe in the back. You crack it open okay. More like yank until the hinges cry Uncle and inside. The almanac, crisp, intact. Terrifying. You stare at it like it might bite, because this little paperback, seemingly innocent compendium of sports scores, almost unraveled everything. And you realize you can't just store it or hide it. You have to destroy it, preferably with fire. You head to the school field and make a makeshift pyre of old math, homework, and dried-out notebook paper. The flame flickers high, the book curling into ash like it's mad about being denied its empire. And just like that's over, or is it? Quirky tidbit. In early drafts, the almanac subplot was supposed to span 2 separate futures, including a dystopia where people worshipped Biff like a casino god king. That version was scrapped when it started getting a little too Mad Max Vegas edition. You walk home under the stars, feeling a strange calm, like you finally cleared a virus from your life's operating system. But time travel doesn't give gold stars. It gives consequences. Because the very next morning, there's a letter on your porch. No stamp. Just handwriting you'd know anywhere, Doc. It's short. 1 sentence. Marty. Meet me where it all began. Midnight. Lone Pine Mall. You fold the paper, heart hammering, because whatever's coming next, it's not just about the past anymore. It's about everything. Midnight again. Back at the Lone Pine Mall parking lot, Lone Pine, thanks to that unfortunate sapling incident in 1955, then the air feels weirdly electric. Like the atmosphere itself remembers what happened here. You park your truck and wait, headlights off, engine ticking gently in the silence. A shopping cart glides past in the breeze, the only spectator to what's about to unfold. The mall's gone dark, its flickering neon sign casting broken light over the asphalt. It's quiet, too quiet. Then boom, a sudden flash of blue lightning arcs across the sky, and there it is, the DeLorean, roaring out of the night like a mechanical ghost, tires screaming, sparks trailing from the undercarriage. It glides in a wide arc and screeches to a stop just feet from you. Smoke hisses from the vents. The gull-wing door swings open. Out steps Doc, brown-white hair, more unkempt than ever, goggles perched on his forehead like he'd just escaped. A wind tunnel filled with theoretical physics. Marty, he exclaims, practically vibrating. You destroyed the almanac, didn't you? You nod, reduced to ashes. Doc sighs. Good. Then we've got one final job. You don't even question it anymore. If Doc tells you the universe is teetering on the edge of spaghetti-based collapse, you just ask if you should bring a fork. He points to the dashboard. There's an anomaly forming. Something fractured in the time stream during our last trip to 1885. The timeline corrected mostly, but not entirely. You raise an eyebrow? Define anomaly? Doc grimaces. Well, I wouldn't call it a paradox exactly. But there's an echo. A sliver of an alternate loop that hasn't fully closed. Historians still argue whether time can loop in on itself like a Mobius strip, or if paradoxes would collapse everything faster than a bad sequel. But Doc seems to believe this one's still unraveling. So what do? You ask. He turns to the flux capacitor, flicking a few switches. We return to the clock tower. One last time. We set everything right. Of course it's the clock tower. The universe has a flair for drama, and the Hill Valley Clock Tower is its favorite stage. You both hop in, and with a roar of the engine and that telltale burst of blue light, the DeLorean once again breaches the veil of time. Destination, November 12th, 1955. You land just minutes before lightning is supposed to strike the tower again. The streets are wet from a light drizzle. The town square glows under street lamps, casting soft golden halos over the brick and stone. In the distance, you can hear Mr. Sandman playing from a passing car radio. It's eerie, familiar, like visiting your own dream from the outside. But something's off. Doc pulls out a modified scanner blinking lights. It worry gears. At least one unnecessarily long antenna waves it around like a sci-fi dowsing rod. The anomaly's close. And then you see it. You well past you. Running through the streets with the first Doc, desperately trying to get back to the clock tower and catch the lightning strike, you crouch behind a bench as the original scene plays out, herself sprinting. A panicked Doc racing to rig the cable, the DeLorean waiting at the ready. Quirky tidbit. For the original Back to the Future, the climactic lightning strike scene required a full-scale clock tower replica, an actual storm machine, and about 50 gallons of carefully timed rain. Because nothing says budget-friendly like simulated acts of God. Your Doc gestures to the base of the tower. There, he whispers, that faint shimmer. That's the loop. It looks like heat haze on a cold day, wobbling air, pulsing lightly, like the memory of a moment that hasn't finished ending. We need to sync it, he explains. Let the moment resolve. No interference, just observation. Once your past self hits 88 miles per hour and jumps back to 1985, the loop will seal, so you wait. The storm intensifies. Lightning flashes in the clouds. Your heart races like it did the first time. You watch your past self climb into the DeLorean. Doc scrambles to reconnect the cable. The sky roars and then crack. Lightning strikes the clock tower. The jolt races through the wire into the cable. Down to the hook, the DeLorean blasts forward. Tires screech. A flash of light, and it vanishes. Gone back to 1985. The air stills. The shimmer fades. Doc checks his scanner again. Anomaly resolved. You stare up at the clock tower. 11:04 p.m. on the dot, and for the first time in forever. Doesn't feel like something's about to go wrong. You ride back through town in the DeLorean, silent except for the low hum of time circuitry shutting down. The streets are empty, peaceful. A few neon signs still flicker in diner windows. You pass the movie theater Cattle Queen of Montana still playing. It's like time's too stubborn to update its listings. Back at the lot where you first arrived in 1955, Doc parks the DeLorean and sighs. This might be goodbye, Marty. Swallow. You're staying again? He nods. I've interfered with time long enough. It's time I let history. Just be, you look at the car. But what about the DeLorean? I have plans for it, he says mysteriously, patting the flux capacitor like a sleeping child. You shake hands, firm, warm. Slightly sad, then Doc climbs into the DeLorean one last time. He hits the controls. A burst of light, and he's gone. You stand in the dark. Wind gently tugging at your jacket. And even though the car's gone, the hum of time still lingers in the air. Asterisk. There's something hauntingly quiet about the absence of time travel, like someone hit pause on the universe, forgot to press play again. For once, you're standing in a version of reality that feels still. Doc's gone. The DeLorean is just a whisper in the timeline, and you, Marty McFly, are back in one piece. Mostly, but then of course something shifts. A blip, a rattle, a vroom that shouldn't exist. You whip around to find the DeLorean barreling out of nowhere again, tires shrieking against pavement. Except this time, no one's driving. You stare as the car skids to a halt beside you, hissing softly. A note flutters from the dashboard addressed to you in Doc's unmistakably dramatic handwriting. Marty, come quick. I'm in 1885. Stuck. Again. Bring tools. You blink tools? You open the trunk. It's already packed. Of course it is. Doc never sends a time travel invitation without a fully stocked repair kit. There's also a hat, a bandana, and what appears to be a saloon-style vest. Lovely. Apparently. You'll be riding into the Old West looking like a steampunk barista. You don't even question the paradox. Anymore, you fire up the DeLorean, plug in the time circuit September 2nd, 1885, and zap. You're gone. The sky splits open in fire, and suddenly you're no longer in a parking lot, but mid-air sailing above a dusty canyon with the DeLorean falling fast. You scream. Like, really? Scream. You're not proud of the noise, but you didn't sign up to be airmailed into the Wild West with a bone-jarring crunch. The DeLorean crashes through a billboard advertising elixir tonic for women's hysteria and lands in a cloud of reddish dirt. You groan, face-planting the steering wheel. Welcome to 1885. The world smells like horses, gunpowder, and extremely poor dental care. You crawl out of the car and dust yourself off, taking in the dry landscape. Cacti, tumbleweeds, and a hole. A lot of nothing surround you. It's hot. Your mouth tastes like you inhaled a hay bale. You check the DeLorean. One of the wheels is cracked, and the fuel line's shredded, 'cause of course it is. It's always the fuel line. In the distance, you spot smoke curling up likely from town. You pocket the note and start walking, boots crunching through dry soil. 10 minutes in, and you're already regretting your wardrobe. The boots squeak, the hat itches, and your vest makes you look like an extra from a spaghetti western that couldn't afford Clint Eastwood. You trudge past a fence where a sign reads, "Welcome to Hill Valley Est, 1850. It's the same. Town but, stripped down, dusty, and charmingly unpaved. Wooden storefronts, hitching posts, and horses tied where future parking meters will be. And looming in the center, half-built and surrounded by scaffolding, the town clock tower. Still under construction? Quirky tidbit. The original Back to the Future Part 3 reused several Western town sets from old John Wayne films, and yes, the horse manure was real. Michael J. Fox fainted during one scene from wearing too tight corsets under his costume. Method acting? Or just bad tailoring? You weave through town, dodging horse carts and suspicious glances. Someone throws a horseshoe that nearly clocks you. You wave sheepishly. Then, as if summoned by plot convenience, you spot Doc. Or rather, Doc as a blacksmith, goggles on, sleeves rolled up, covered in soot and hammering away at a suspiciously futuristic contraption. He doesn't notice you until your shadow stretches across his workbench. He looks up, and for a moment, time stands still. Marty, "Hey, Doc. Nice forge." He rushes over, genuinely thrilled. "You got my letter?" "Yeah, just casually time-hopping again." "No big deal." He laughs, wiping sweat from his brow. The DeLorean's hidden in a cave nearby. "Hey, I've been trying to retrofit it with 1885 tech to get us out of here. Not easy when your best tools are horseshoes and black powder." You follow him back to a rocky outcrop just beyond town. Inside, hidden behind some brush and old mining carts, sits the DeLorean, dusty but intact. Doc's made a few ... adjustments. One of the wheels is now wood and metal. The fusion reactor looks suspiciously like it's running on moonshine. He scratches his head, still missing the velocity. "We've got to hit 88, and these roads aren't exactly Formula One certified." You grin. "Let me guess, Drain." He raises his eyebrows. "Exactly. Historians still argue whether 19th century locomotives could reach the necessary speeds. In real life, some topped out around 60 miles per hour, not quite fast enough for a flux capacitor-fueled exit strategy. But in cinematic physics, anything's possible with enough steam, pressure, and screaming. The plan? Use an upcoming train shipment too? Push the DeLorean along a straight track out of town, with added boosters made from Doc's modified dynamite formula. What could possibly go wrong? Before you leave the cave, Doc hands you a sketchbook filled with blueprints, calculations, in weirdly good pencil portraits of Clara, the schoolteacher who, judging by the margins, he's completely smitten with. You raise an eyebrow. "Something you want to tell me, Doc?" He blushes. Her mind is as brilliant as her. "Well, yes, I've grown quite fond of her," you laugh. Looks like someone's ready to settle down. He doesn't respond, just stares at the cave wall like he's doing calculus in his head. "There may come a time, Marty, where I choose to stay." That sinks in. You don't argue, because maybe time travel isn't about fixing everything. Maybe. It's about choosing what to keep broken. You glance up at the stars brighter out here, ancient. You wonder how many versions of yourself are floating through history right now, and for once, you don't feel lost. You feel ... grounded. At least until a rattlesnake slithers past your foot and you jump 3 feet into the air, shrieking something. That sounds suspiciously UNMANLY. Doc chuckles. "Still afraid of snakes, huh?" "Not afraid," you huff, respectfully terrified. And with that, you both get to work. Train tracks, timetables, dynamite recipes that definitely shouldn't be legal in any century. The final ride's coming, and you're going to do it the old-fashioned way. Steam, grit, and just a little bit of reckless science. You rise before dawn. When the sky is still a bruise-colored promise of heat and the smell of horses mingles with sizzling bacon on a campfire, Doc has stationed the DeLorean at the end of the makeshift rail spur. Boosters strapped, steam vents glowing. You secure your tool belt, glance at your compass, still not invented here, so it's more fashion than function, and absorb the scene. Today, you face ludicrous Tannen himself, Mad Dog's grandson from an alternate timeline, who somehow heard about your train plan and decided it was worth crashing. Violently, something about Tannen blood and time travel seems genetically predestined for mayhem. Anthropologists still debate whether certain family lines inherit a predisposition for chaos. But here you are, living proof of Tannen's temporal curse. You sprint toward the DeLorean alongside Doc, who's fiddling with pressure gauges like a pianist tuning a very anxious piano. The train whistle blows in the distance, low and regretful, as if it knows what's coming. You glance toward the tracks and spot Ludacris swaggering out from behind a rail car, six-shooter glinting in the morning light, and a grin that smells worse than his actual breath, a rancid combination of tobacco and old ale. Fringe historians have uncovered accounts of frontier bandits boasting dental rosters as grim as their reputations, so maybe it's not that surprising. Time freak, he sneers, spittle flecking your jacket. You can't outrun me, do. Frown, I'm not outrunning you, you say. Calling back to your hoverboard chase in 2015? I'm running through you straight. Into 1985. He cocks his pistol. Let's see you try. Doc yanks a lever. Steam hisses under the hood. Sparks dance along booster tips. You grip the steering wheel, knuckles white, heart pounding like train wheels on iron rails. Remember? Doc whispers. We need a solid push from the engine and minimal interference. No heroics, you nod. But as Ludacris steps onto the rails, aiming at Doc of all people, you can't help yourself. Hey, you shout, waving your wrench. Watch where you're pointing that thing. There are science experiments downrange. Hey! Sneers again, tightens his grip. You brace. The whistle screams nearer. The ground trembles. The brisk morning air whistles past your ears. The wheel turns 5 miles per hour. 10, 20. Time dilates. You flash on that first DeLorean launch in the mall parking lot. The smell of burnt tires and ozone. Doc's wild eyes gleaming with possibility. T-minus 5 seconds. Doc yells, sliding in beside you, holding on for dear life. Ludacris levels the pistol. 3, 2. You catch sight of the locomotive barrel looming. The air pulses. 1. Vroom. The DeLorean jolts as the train latches to its push plate. Boosters roaring. Ludacris fires. The bullet hisses past, missing Doc by inches and embedding in the wooden. Fence splinters fly like confetti. The Tannen curse nearly strikes again, but you're already moving. The ground under the wheels trembles, then surrenders to sheer velocity, 0.30 miles per hour. You glance behind. Ludacris is running, aiming again. The wind tears at his hat, but he holds steady, a comet burning his time-lost envy. 50 miles per hour. The countryside. Blurs, sagebrush, cairns, half-forgotten relics of future streets.
Oh.
The barrel of Ludacris's pistol gleams closer in your peripheral vision. 70 miles per hour. The booster flames surge.
I like roars.
Fill your ears. You remember that time in 1955 when you nearly got zapped practicing your guitar riff and survived? Only because time itself seemed to cough in your favor, 0.80 miles per hour, the needle flutters. Ludacris fires again. This time the bullet clinks against the tempered steel chest platour trusty time travel vest, like a tiny hammer on an anvil. It rattles you, but you're still in one piece. 88, Doc shouts. You floor it. The world dives backward. The prairie stretches and contracts. The train falls away. The tracks dissolve into a tapestry of neon lights, and then you're gone. Flash. The DeLorean rolls to a gentle stop in the Lone Pine Mall parking lot. Neon humming overhead, and the echo of trainers from 1985 clattering in the distance. Stumble out, heart hammering, tool belt slipping from your waist. Doc catches you. We did it, he breathes. The Tannen paradox is, finally you grin, patting the chest plate. Blunted at least. He laughs softly, relief draining, into his shoulders. In the distance, you swear you hear a faint, frustrated howl Ludacris. Still stranded in the dust of 1885, you help Doc push the DeLorean into the shadows. Behind you, the mall sign flickers. Lone Pine Mall. The lot is quiet, haunted only by the ghosts of future shenanigans and the promise of home. You turn to Doc. For the first time, there's no urgency in his eyes. Just a soft, grateful look. "We're done," he says. You nod. "Yeah, I think we are." The world around you exhales. Time, once a tumbling roller coaster of possibilities, settles into a gentle hum.
Oh.
The night air wraps around you like a soft blanket, and you realize, after all this, after every paradox, every rogue tannin, every nearly fatal stunt, you're exactly where you belong. Safe, present, home. The wind carries the smell of coal, smoke, and late summer dust as you return to the old tracks, unsure if Doc followed. The DeLorean may have made it home with you, but Doc, maybe not. He always said time travel was his burden, not yours. You try calling out, but the only response is the chirp of cicadas and the faint rumble of the distant rail lines, long since abandoned. A flash catches your eye. Metallic, glinting in the sun, high above the tree line. No way. Your jaw drops as a locomotive, yes. Full-on, steampunk style. Jules Verne dreams of this beauty emerges from behind a hill and flies through the air, like it doesn't know gravity. Is a thing. Copper pipes hiss steam, gears whirl, and its wheels spin lazily above the earth like a ballerina made of brass. You blink twice to make sure you're not hallucinating. Then it lands. Gently on the tracks where the DeLorean once rolled. The door hisses open, and there he is, Doc Brown, top hat, long coat, and a grin stretched across his soot-smudged face. Beside him, holding his arm, is Clara, the same Clara from 1885. Her hair pinned up, her dress blending frontier and fantasy, like she just stepped out of a cosplay catalog. Behind them, two wide-eyed kids peek out, both with that wild, time-drunk spark in their eyes. "Doc," you say, stepping closer, squinting. "Marty?" He laughs, arms outstretched. "I couldn't let you think I vanished forever. Now could. I mean, you start blinking at the literal flying train in front of you. A letter would have worked too." He chuckles. "Wouldn't have the same dramatic effect, would it?" Clara steps down next, graceful as always. "It was my idea to paint flames on the side. You wanted to make it plaid." "I stand by that," Doc mumbles. They walk toward you, and for a moment, it's just like old times only now. The mad scientist has a family. The train can time travel. And you're the only one without a time machine in your garage. You sit on a crate nearby, watching as Doc and his kids fiddle with controls inside the train's cab. You're smiling without realizing it. For a guy who once nearly erased his own existence, you've managed to end up in a version of reality that feels oddly earned. "Want a ride?" Doc calls, poking his head out of a hatch. You shake your head. "I think I've had my share of centuries." He nods, solemn this time. "Probably for the best." Time travels. Complicated. You both know he's being modest. Historians still argue whether any of the theoretical models of time, Travelinstein, Rosen bridges, closed time-like curves, quantum entanglement, could ever result in stable looping timelines. And if they did, would memory persist? Would consequences compound? Or would everything just collapse into a paradox spaghetti? You don't know. But you do know that Doc Brown made it work. Somehow, with nothing but 1.21 gigawatts, flux capacitor, and sheer narrative audacity. He walks over and puts a hand on your shoulder. "You've done well, Marty." You nod. "So have you. Family suits you." Still not sure about parenting in a fourth dimension, but Claire is a good teacher. His son tugs his coat. "Dad, can we go to 2045 now? I promised I could see." Hologram chess. Doc size. "See, we used to worry about alternate timelines. Now it's just screen time." You laugh. Then you realize something. Doc isn't just surviving through time anymore. He's living in it, and you. You finally get to rest. Quirky tidbit. The original train from Back to the Future Part 3 was built from scratch with custom hydraulics, giving it just enough mobility to mimic levitation on screen. Michael J. Fox reportedly wanted to take it home. Universal said no. Boo, the train begins to whir louder now. Gears engage. Steam vents pop open like a breathing dragon waking up. Clara waves from the window. The boys stick their tongues out playfully. You give a mock salute, backing. Up as the engine hums louder, Doc shouts over the sound. Remember, Marty, your future hasn't been written yet. Make it a good one. Then with a blinding flash and a soft hump of displaced air, the train vanishes, leaving only scorched tracks and a smell of cold dusted ozone behind. You exhale, it's over, or beginning again, depends on the timeline. You start walking home. The suburban sky settling into dusk. A dog barks. Someone waters their lawn. You pass a family arguing about VHS rentals, something about rewinding Goonies again and smile. This version of the world is flawed, analog, and beautifully slow. And it's yours. Doc's train might have all the upgrades. Hover power, warp rails, D-station. But you have a skateboard, a fully charged Walkman, and no existential crises. Scheduled for at least a week. That's enough. You reach your driveway, Biff's nowhere in sight, your car's unscratched. Your guitar still leans against your bed, and for the first time since that fateful night in the Twin Pines parking lot, you think you'll actually sleep? Today, you face Ludicrous Tannen himself, Mad Dog's grandson from an alternate timeline, who somehow heard about your train plan and decided it was worth crashing. Violently, something about Tannen blood and time travel seems genetically predestined for mayhem. Anthropologists still debate whether certain family lines inherit a predisposition for chaos. But here you are, living proof of Tannen's temporal curse. You sprint toward the DeLorean alongside Doc, who's fiddling with pressure gauges like a pianist tuning a very anxious piano. The train whistle blows in the distance, low and regretful, as if it knows what's coming. You glance toward the tracks and spot Ludicrous swaggering out from behind a rail car, six-shooter glinting in the morning light, and a grin that smells worse than his actual breath, a rancid combination of tobacco and old ale. Fringe historians have uncovered accounts of frontier bandits boasting dental rosters as grim as their reputations, so maybe it's not that surprising. Time freak, he sneers, spittle flecking your jacket. You can't outrun me. Do. Frown, I'm not outrunning you, you say. Calling back to your hoverboard chase in 2015? I'm running through you straight. Into 1985. He cocks his pistol. Let's see you try. Doc yanks a lever. Steam hisses under the hood. Sparks dance along booster tips. You grip the steering wheel, knuckles white, heart pounding like train wheels on iron rails. Remember? Doc whispers. We need a solid push from the engine and minimal interference. No heroics, you nod. But as Ludicrous steps onto the rails, aiming at Doc of all people, you can't help yourself. Hey, you shout, waving your wrench. Watch where you're pointing that thing. There are science experiments downrange. Hey! Sneers again, tightens his grip. You brace. The whistle screams nearer. The ground trembles. The brisk morning air whistles past your ears. The wheel turns 5 miles per hour. 10, 20. Time dilates. You flash on that first DeLorean launch in the mall parking lot. The smell of burnt tires and ozone. Doc's wild eyes gleaming with possibility. T-minus 5 seconds. Doc yells, sliding in beside you, holding on for dear life. Ludicrous levels the pistol. 3, 2. You catch sight of the locomotive barrel looming. The air pulses. 1. Vroom. The DeLorean jolts as the train latches to its push plate. Boosters roaring. Ludicrous fires. The bullet hisses past, missing Doc by inches and embedding in the wooden. Fence splinters fly like confetti. The Tannen curse nearly strikes again, but you're already moving. The ground under the wheels trembles, then surrenders to sheer velocity, 0.30 miles per hour. You glance behind. Ludicrous is running, aiming again. The wind tears at his hat, but he holds steady, a comet burning his time-lost envy. 50 miles per hour. The countryside. Blurs, sagebrush, cairns, half-forgotten relics of future streets.
Oh.
The barrel of Ludicrous's pistol gleams closer in your peripheral vision. 70 miles per hour. The booster flames surge.
Alec roars.
fill your ears. You remember that time in 1955 when you nearly got zapped practicing your guitar riff and survived? Only because time itself seemed to cough in your favor, 0.80 miles per hour, the needle flutters. Ludicrous fires again. This time the bullet clinks against the tempered steel chest platour trusty time travel vest, like a tiny hammer on an anvil. It rattles you, but you're still in one piece. 88, Doc shouts. You floor it. The world dives backward. The prairie stretches and contracts. The train falls away. The tracks dissolve into a tapestry of neon lights, and then you're gone. Flash, the DeLorean rolls to a gentle stop in the Lone Pine Mall parking lot. Neon humming overhead, and the echo of trainers from 1985 clattering in the distance. Stumble out, heart hammering, tool belt slipping from your waist. Doc catches you. We did it, he breathes. The tannin paradox is, finally you grin, patting the chest plate. Blunted at least. He laughs softly, relief draining, into his shoulders. In the distance, you swear you hear a faint, frustrated howl ludicrous. Still stranded in the dust of 1885, you help Doc push the DeLorean into the shadows. Behind you, the mall sign flickers. Lone Pine Mall. The lot is quiet, haunted only by the ghosts of future shenanigans and the promise of home. You turn to Doc. For the first time, there's no urgency in his eyes. Just a soft, grateful look. We're done, he says. You nod. Yeah, I think we are. The world around you exhales. Time, once a tumbling roller coaster of possibilities, settles into a gentle hum.
Oh.
The night air wraps around you like a soft blanket, and you realize, after all this, after every paradox, every rogue tannin, every nearly fatal stunt, you're exactly where you belong. Safe, present, home. The wind carries the smell of coal, smoke, and late summer dust as you return to the old tracks, unsure if Doc followed. The DeLorean may have made it home with you, but Doc, maybe not. He always said time travel was his burden, not yours. You try calling out, but the only response is the chirp of cicadas and the faint rumble of the distant rail lines, long since abandoned. A flash catches your eye. Metallic, glinting in the sun, high above the tree line. No way. Your jaw drops as a locomotive yes. Full-on, steampunk style. Jules Verne dreams of this beauty emerges from behind a hill and flies through the air, like it doesn't know gravity. Is a thing. Copper pipes hiss steam, gears whirl, and its wheels spin lazily above the earth, like a ballerina made of brass. You blink twice to make sure you're not hallucinating. Then it lands. Gently on the tracks where the DeLorean once rolled. The door hisses open, and there he is. Doc Brown. Top hat, long coat, and a grin stretched across his soot-smudged face. Beside him, holding his arm, is Clara, the same Clara from 1885. Her hair pinned up, her dress blending frontier and fantasy, like she just stepped out of a cosplay catalog. Behind them, two wide-eyed kids peek out, both with that wild, time-drunk spark in their eyes. Doc, you say, stepping closer, squinting. Marty? He laughs, arms outstretched. I couldn't let you think I vanished forever. Now could. I mean, you start blinking at the literal flying train in front of you. A letter would have worked too. He chuckles. Wouldn't have the same dramatic effect, would it? Clara steps down next, graceful as always. It was my idea to paint flames on the side. You wanted to make it plaid. I stand by that, Doc mumbles. They walk toward you, and for a moment, it's just like old times only now. The mad scientist has a family. The train can time travel. And you're the only one without a time machine in your garage. You sit on a crate nearby, watching as Doc and his kids fiddle with controls inside the train's cab. You're smiling without realizing it. For a guy who once nearly erased his own existence, you've managed to end up in a version of reality that feels oddly ... earned. Want a ride? Doc calls, poking his head out of a hatch. You shake your head. I think I've had my share of centuries. He nods, solemn this time. Probably for the best. Time travels. Complicated. You both know he's being modest. Historians still argue whether any of the theoretical models of time, Travelinstein, Rosen bridges, closed time-like curves, quantum entanglement, could ever result in stable looping timelines. And if they did, would memory persist? Would consequences compound? Or would everything just collapse into a paradox spaghetti? You don't know. But you do know that Doc Brown made it work. Somehow, with nothing but 1.21 gigawatts, flux capacitor, and sheer narrative audacity. He walks over and puts a hand on your shoulder. You've done well, Marty. You nod. So have you. Family suits you. Still not sure about parenting in a fourth dimension, but Claire is a good teacher. His son tugs his coat. Dad, can we go to 2045 now? I promised I could see. Hologram chess. Doc size. See. We used to worry about alternate timelines. Now it's just screen time. You laugh. Then you realize something. Doc isn't just surviving through time anymore. He's living in it, and you. You finally get to rest. Quirky tidbit. The original train from Back to the Future Part 3 was built from scratch with custom hydraulics, giving it just enough mobility to mimic levitation on screen. Michael J. Fox reportedly wanted to take it home. Universal said no. Boo, the train begins to whir louder now. Gears engage. Steam vents pop open like a breathing dragon waking up. Clara waves from the window. The boys stick their tongues out playfully. You give a mock salute, backing. Up as the engine hums louder, Doc shouts over the sound. Remember, Marty, your future hasn't been written yet. Make it a good one. Then with a blinding flash and a soft hump of displaced air, the train vanishes, leaving only scorched tracks and a smell of cold dusted ozone behind. You exhale, it's over, or beginning again, depends on the timeline. You start walking home. The suburban sky settling into dusk. A dog barks. Someone waters their lawn. You pass a family arguing about VHS rentals, something about rewinding Goonies again and smile. This version of the world is flawed, analog, and beautifully slow. And it's yours. Doc's train might have all the upgrades. Hover power, warp rails, D-station. But you have a skateboard, a fully charged Walkman, and no existential crises. Scheduled for at least a week. That's enough. You reach your driveway, Biff's nowhere in sight, your car's unscratched. Your guitar still leans against your bed, and for the first time since that fateful night in the Twin Pines parking lot, you think you'll actually sleep? The lawn sprinkler ticks quietly as you step onto your porch. Shoes slightly dusty from your time-traveling trek through the Old West. The neighborhood is peaceful. Not suspiciously peaceful, like when Biff ruled Hill Valley with an iron pompadour, but normal. You glance up at the stars, half expecting a glowing contrail and the echo of a flux capacitor sparking to life. But nothing stirs. You're finally back in the present. Still, present is a funny word now. You've seen so many versions of it. It's like ordering a sandwich and getting a dozen slightly different ones from alternate realities. Some with extra mustard. One where the bread's on fire, another where someone else already ate it. You head inside expecting your mom to be watching TV. Instead, you find her humming in the kitchen, cheerfully pouring iced tea from a glass pitcher that has definitely never contained vodka. Your dad's in the den, typing something on a vintage Macintosh, something not remotely weird now, but definitely futuristic back in 1985. And no one's asking why you were gone for 3 days. Time travel is funny that way. Folds neatly. When it wants to, like origami made by a caffeinated librarian, you glance at the family photo on the wall. Everyone's standing straighter, happier, crisp jeans instead of sweater vests. Your brother's wearing a tie and doesn't look like he just rolled out of a Dungeons and Dragons session. Your sister's got that confident smirk like she knows she'll be valedictorian and date the cute guy from Foot Locker. And you? Lie. Whole. Historically, family photo evolution is a subtle window into the aspirations of a generation. Historians argue over when smiles became standard. Some claim the 1900s. Others trace it to Kodak ads and fluoride. But in your house, that smile's a ripple effect of a punch your dad threw 60 years ago. You head upstairs, the creak of the banister oddly comforting. In your room, everything is untouched. No hoverboard, no 1885 rifle, not even an almanac. Just your trusty guitar, your amp, and a stack of cassette tapes with labels like Huey Lewis, Very Loud Mix, and Chuck Berry Still Rules. You sit on the edge of your bed. Sneakers dangling, mind racing. The DeLorean's gone, the train's flown away. Doc is somewhere, somewhen, and here you are. The normalcy is both soothing and eerie. After all, you've been a cowboy, a pseudo-rock star, and a time fugitive. And now you're just a teenager. Again, wondering what's for dinner, and if Jennifer's still into you. Spoiler, she is. You pick up your Walkman, still miraculously working after all this, and pop in a tape. The music fuzzes to life-warm analog, like a hug from a decade with fewer digital receipts, and suddenly, it hits you. Time didn't just pass while you were gone. You passed through it. You've seen history unfold, watched the consequences of choice unfold like dominoes. You've seen how small nudges like a dance, a lightning strike, or a fist to Biff's jaw can ripple through generations. You've watched love bloom on a train, trust rebuild in a parking lot, and alternate realities crumble under the weight of one man's unchecked ego. Hi, Casino Biff. You lie back on your bed, eyes tracing the glow in the dark stars stuck to your ceiling. Remember those? A gift from your fourth-grade self, certain that outer space was your destiny. In a way, it was. 'Cause once you've touched time, the universe never really lets go. Quirky tidbit time, the real Twin Pines Mall was actually the Punt Hills Mall in City of Industry, California. And yes, the sign really did change in the film from Twin Pines to Lone Pine after Marty knocks over one of Peabody's precious trees. Blink and you'll miss it, but once you see it, it's canon. Downstairs, the doorbell rings. You freeze, mid-thought. You hustle down to the porch, and there she is, Jennifer. Leaning on the porch rail, smiling like she hasn't time-traveled with you yet, but somehow still knows everything. You okay? She asks, brow furrowing. You smile, better than okay. You walk with her through the neighborhood. The sky's gone lavender now, stars winking into view. A streetlight flickers above as you tell her carefully edited stories about the past, the future, and the weird cowboy phase you're officially done explaining. She listens, laughs, even when you get to the flying train part. And suddenly, you realize this is the real timeline. Not because it's the most advanced, not because it's cleanest or safest or even the happiest, but because it's yours. You round the corner to Doc's old place, empty now, vines curling up the mailbox, a faint dent in the driveway where the DeLorean once purred. You and Jennifer sit on the curb. Do you ever think about what you'd change? She asks softly. You shake your head. Not anymore. Historians still debate whether hypothetical time travel would improve or worsen personal decision-making. Would people be more reckless? More cautious? Or would they just loop endlessly in indecision? You lean back on your palms and look at the stars. No loops, no regrets. It's just this moment. I think I'm good, you say. A shooting star arcs overhead. Make a wish you don't need to say out loud. Maybe, just maybe, somewhere out there, crossed 100 timelines, and Paradox's Doc is watching. Proud, slightly scorched, probably sipping tea next to Clara while his kids reprogram the onboard toaster. But for now, here in the one present you're lucky enough to call yours, it's just you, Jennifer, a calm evening, and the quiet knowledge that you've already lived a lifetime and came back better. You wake up the next morning with sunlight pouring in and no Libyan terrorists outside, which, all things considered, is a win. The air smells like summer break and the faintest hint of leftover pizza. Birds chirp out your window like they were hired for ambience. There's no time machine in your garage, no chalkboard full of string theory equations, just a skateboard, a half-finished comic, and the calm, mundane gravity of normal life, but you know better now. You've danced with the rules of time, some strict, others as wobbly as a Jell-O calendar, and now you're finally asking the right question. What are the actual rules of time travel? Spoiler, there aren't any. Or rather, there are too many. And nobody agrees on which ones matter most. Doc had rules. He had rules. Don't meet your past self. Don't mess with the space-time continuum. And most famously, never, ever bet on sports, which is frankly the biggest buzzkill in history. Historians and theoretical physicists still argue whether causality, the idea that a cause is B and not the other way around, would survive a true closed time-like loop. Some say the grandfather paradox is unsolvable. Go back. Stop your grandfather from meeting your grandmother and Pufu don't exist. Others say the universe would self-correct. No matter what, you'd still be born. Maybe just with slightly different eyebrows. The Back to the Future trilogy takes a kitchen sink approach. It tosses in butterfly effects, alternate timelines, paradoxes, and a little narrative fairy dust. It's like Einstein meets Shakespeare, meets a teenager with a camcorder and a caffeine addiction. You remember the moment when 1985 hit? You, the alternate reality where Biff had transformed Hill Valley into a neon-soaked crime kingdom. All it took was a sports almanac in the wrong hands. It's both ridiculous and terrifying. Because that one, small action buying, a book cascaded into a dystopia. Quirky tidbit, Bob Gale, the film's co-writer, once said the entire alternate 1985 concept was inspired by wondering what would happen if his dad had never met his mom. That little thought spiraled into what is essentially the coolest PSA about butterfly effects ever made. You sit in the park later, watching squirrels battle, over a French fry, and think about how tightly the timeline can tangle. Marty's own life hinged on a dance, a kiss, a single moment of social bravery. That's not just sci-fi, that's real life with extra glitter. You pick up a stick and draw a little timeline in the sand. One line, then you add a branch what? If you'd never met Doc, another what? If Biff hadn't crashed into that manure truck, soon the lines snake everywhere. Like your high school notebook when algebra got boring. It's chaos, but there's a pattern to little cause and effect knots tied across moments. Branching in every direction, all from choices. Maybe time isn't a straight line. Maybe it's a tree, or spaghetti, or a chooser on adventure. Book with very high stakes. Doc always tried to simplify things. He had his chalkboards and clocks and wild hair that practically radiated math. But underneath it all, he knew. Time travel doesn't behave, reacts. There's a theory called the many worlds interpretation. It suggests every possible outcome happens, just in its own universe. So somewhere out there is a Marty who never went back. One who stayed in 1885 and opened a saloon. One who never found the letter. One who is Biff, and that's a whole therapy session in itself. But you're this Marty, and your story, as tangled as it's been, feels like it's found its shape. As the sun moves, casting longer shadows across the park bench, you think about rules, the ones Doc gave, the ones you broke. The ones time bent for you when it mattered most. Maybe there's one rule that holds up. Don't forget where or when you've been, because time travel isn't just a vehicle with a flux capacitor. It's also memory, reflection, growth, the way you treat people differently because of what you know now. The way you walk into a room and see not just what's there, but what could be there if you nudge the moment just right. It's not about fixing the past. It's about learning from it. You're floating now, not literally, although, after everything you've time-hopped through tonight, who's to say? But there's a distinct weightlessness as you ease deeper into your pillow, as if the DeLorean has one wheel in your dreams and the other in memory. And here's the thing, Back to the Future. It's not just a movie, it's a feeling. You didn't come for just the gigawatts or the sci-fi. You came for that first burst of music as the Universal logo fades in. The hum of clocks ticking in Doc's lab. The way Marty strums that guitar and launches himself straight into a speaker cabinet. It's the way time folds, not just on screen, but inside you. Because somehow, across 3 movies and several decades, this trilogy managed to turn a goofy time travel premise into something timeless. It never shoves lessons down your throat, but they're there, clear as day. It's hidden beneath hoverboards and manure jokes. You learn that family matters, that actions ripple outward, that courage doesn't always come in lightning bolts. Sometimes, it's just showing up when history tells you to duck and Doc Brown. Yes, his scrambled egg hair may have delivered one of the softest truths ever whispered by science fiction. Your future is whatever you make it. That line has circled back through generations like a flux loop, spoken by parents to kids, painted on dorm walls, tattooed on forearms. Because somehow, in between the madcap chases and time skips, Back to the Future became a compass. In what makes it even more endearing? It's just so earnest, not cynical, not edgy. It doesn't wink at the audience every 5 seconds. It trusts you to laugh with it, not at it. Believes in love and second chances and clock towers that need saving. Historians still debate whether Back to the Future belongs in the pantheon of all-time great films or just the all-time great fun ones. But try telling that to the millions who still quote it, cosplay it, dream of DeLoreans in their garage. You know what's wild? A generation of kids grew up thinking the future would have flying cars, Autolace Nikes, and rehydrated pizza. We didn't get most of that, though. The sneakers tried. But we did get something better. We got a story that travels through time. With us, every rewatch is a jump to a different version of you. The first time you saw it, wide-eyed, the time you showed it to someone you loved, the time it comforted. You're like an old friend, reminding you that the past doesn't have to trap you. The future is still unwritten. And those details, the clock frozen at 10:04. The DeLorean's flickering lights, the sudden thunder of the theme their lullabies. Now, your mind drifts over callbacks like leaves on a stream. Loren's milkshake. George's trembling fist. Doc's giddy Great Scott. Marty's skateboarding brilliance. That train. Oh, that glorious flying train, fading into the clouds with a puff of steam and a promise. You don't remember? Every line, but you remember how it made you feel. That's the real time machine, not plutonium, not wormholes. Feelings, imagination, nostalgia, hope, because even though none of it was real to science, the car that time jumps you believed. You still believe in friendship, redemption, and improbable inventions drawn after bumping your head on a sink. So tonight, as your breath slows and your room grows still, you're not just falling asleep, you're coasting down a road lit by headlights and stars, and you know what's ahead. 2 tire fire trails, fading into the dark, and just beyond them. Whatever you make it, now relax your grip on the present, and coast softly into the unknown. The flux capacitor is humming, the clock tower is silent, and your story, still unwritten. Wind down section, approximately 300 words. Let your breathing deepen now. The road beneath your thoughts smooths out, turning from asphalt into sky. There are no clocks here, no ticking seconds or looming deadlines, just silence, and the faint familiar hum of a story settling into its final groove. You might still hear the chime of that clock tower in the distance, or feel the cool brushed metal of the DeLoreans dash beneath your fingertips. Let those images drift like feathers. They'll wait for you, tucked away behind your eyelids, ready to play again whenever you need comfort or escape. Time, after all, is never really lost. It just wanders. You've traveled far tonight. Through storms and starlight, laughter and lightning, and now your mind deserves rest. Let the background noise fade into that soft ASMR, hush the gentle purr of a fan. The creak of nighttime settling in. In this moment, you're safe. There's no paradox to fix, no almanac to chase, no timelines to worry about. Only breath and quiet, and that warm, steady feeling of being exactly where you need to be. If your dreams take you back to Hill Valley, let them. If they whisk you elsewhere, that's okay too. The future is still wide open. Sleep now, and remember roads. Where you're going, you don't need roads.